The end of Oak Street is officially out, and yesterday I posted a spoiler free review. But today, it's time to talk about spoilers. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, I really like this movie. I think that it's really fun from beginning to end. There's a lot of really awesome moments that have certainly stuck with me and will likely stick with me from for weeks to come. And there's just a lot of things that I want to talk about. A lot of this will likely be disorganized. It's going to be a lot of me talking about the things that I enjoyed about the film rather than just like a cohesive play by play of the events that happened. Now, one thing that I really want to mention is that I really liked the buildup in this movie. Now, if you begin in a regular like suburban party, it was very nice. Everything's peaceful. Everything's bright. You get introduced to some of the neighbors. You get introduced to the family. How they look perfect from like the outside, but in the inside, there's a lot of problems. Of course, mom and dad are fighting and want a divorce, and the kids can sense it. And there's a lot of things going on that will play into the movie. And then eventually you get to a point where, the storm occurs and a giant anomaly shows up and kidnaps the whole neighborhood and brings it back millions of years to the time of the dinosaurs. As far as I can tell, there is no specific time period that we've landed in. There's mostly Jurassic creatures here, but you do have some creatures present that obviously did not live in the Jurassic, like Spinosaurus, for example. There's also Coelophysis, which it's been confirmed pretty much that this fellow right here is Coelophysis. They released the soundtrack list, and one of the names for the songs has Coelophysis in it. This creature looks the most like Coelophysis out of all of the creatures that we saw in the film. This is probably Coelophysis. I'm telling you. And now that I've seen the film, I can clearly see that it doesn't have a sickle claw. I made sure to stare at those toes. I did not see a sickle claw. The head shape matches Coelophysis. The neck matches Coelophysis. It is oversized, but pretty much every dinosaur in this movie is oversized. Who's to say that the Coelophysis would not be oversized too? Please, people. I just want to say that I've called it from day one. This is probably Coelophysis. Anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of Coelophysis running around. Obviously, they're Triassic dinosaurs, and they did not live in the Jurassic. I guess you could probably assume that some of these dinosaurs were also brought back in time, but they mentioned in the movie that what happens is that things are essentially replaced. And so, because this neighborhood was, brought back in time, a piece of the Jurassic, or a piece of the Mesozoic rather, was brought back to the present. And, that they essentially just swapped places. So, I don't know if other creatures were brought back. It's possible, but I don't know. Now, like I've said previously, there were a lot of creatures in this movie. You had things like the aforementioned Coelophysis, the Allosaurus, the Spinosaurus, giant turtles. I'm not sure what they're meant to be. There's also some croc relatives. There was some Stegosaurus. There was some Ankylosaurus. Lots of pterosaurs. One of them looked like a Tropeognathus, especially in this shot right here. Like, I mean, just look at that. And there was also like a giant snake-like creature. It's probably a snake. When it opened its mouth, it kind of looked pretty similar to a snake. My guess is that it's Titanoboa because, Titanoboa was a big snake, so it makes sense for your big snake to be based off of Titanoboa, which is obviously a Cenozoic creature and didn't even live in the Mesozoic. But a lot of things have been brought together. Either they were brought together through other anomalies, or the filmmakers just wanted a giant snake, and so they just brought in Titanoboa. Who truly knows, honestly? Like I've mentioned previously, the creature designs are certainly all over the place. I liked some better than others. The Coelophysis is not a bad design. It certainly looks like a Coelophysis to me. The biggest standout is, of course, the sauropods, which they look like Brachiosaurus. I mean, they even have like the bump on their head. As we saw in a previous trailer, these guys are feathered, and they were like one of the most feathered dinosaurs in the movie, which is just absolutely insane. More feathered than like some of the theropods, except for maybe the Coelophysis. Uh, as I've mentioned previously, that many feathers on a sauropod is probably a death sentence for the poor animal. Sauropods lived in generally cold, like warmer environments, and this environment was probably too warm for giant sauropods like that, and so they would overheat and then they would die. They would just keel over. There was a really interesting moment with the sauropods that I certainly never thought we would see in a movie. it was an instance of two of them mating on a house. We're mating on a house, and we spent so much time here, just having Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor just like in shock that they're witnessing this event occur in front of them, and Anne Hathaway makes him take a picture in front of it. It was interesting. I never thought we would see anything like that in a dinosaur film. I think we almost saw it in Rebirth, if memory serves me properly. I think we were gonna see an actual like mating scene between the titanosaurs. Now the prophecy has finally been fulfilled. We can all go to bed in peace, knowing that it finally occurred on the big screen, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway, they were really good in this movie. I liked them. I liked their dynamic. You know, they were at each other's throats a lot, but they certainly felt like, you know, in a lot of ways, they felt incredibly genuine, which certainly helped a lot with the story. And that especially helps with their children, who also felt incredibly genuine. Um, there were certainly some surprises in this movie. One of the biggest surprises being that, and remember, this is a spoiler filled review. If you didn't catch that in the beginning, this is your second warning. This is a spoiler review. One of the biggest surprises is that Ewan McGregor dies here. He he actually like full on just dies. It was not I mean, when we saw that moment in the trailers, I think a lot of us might have expected it because of how violently the Allosaurus grabbed him on the leg and just kind of like was like throwing him around. It felt like it was inevitable that he would die there, but I think by this point a lot of us, or at least I'm very used to like the Jurassic films where for the most part main characters make it out scotch-free, you know, especially in the Jurassic World films. Not so much in the park films, you know, main characters died all the time in those. Ewan McGregor played like a really good guy who always tried to see the positive in things. He was trying to see the positive in this whole situation the whole time. And he certainly did not deserve the fate that he got because it was so brutal. I was not expecting this amount of brutality in this movie because he doesn't just like, you know, he doesn't like die off screen or something or in some heroic fashion where he's like, oh, I'm going to run off and I'm going to drag the Allosaurus over there. And then, you know, the screen cuts away and then we get the reaction from the people. No, he gets bitten on the leg, thrown around, slammed onto the ground. He loses his leg in the process. Like the Allosaurus ripped off his leg, and he's screaming about that first. Then he looks up, and then he's screaming again, and the Allosaurus bites down on top of him and kills him right there. And then we get a shot from like Anne Hathaway's perspective as she's standing there in shock as we hear this Allosaurus eat him. Like you can hear all the noises of him being eaten. And then she walks over to the poor children who just witnessed their father get brutally killed by a large theropod that lived 150 million years ago. And then they have to continue on without him. You know, hats off to the movie because I was not expecting something like that to happen. And it's good that that happened. I do really like surprises in movies. You know, that's one of the reasons why I try my best to avoid spoilers because I like seeing moments where it's like, oh my God, I did not expect it. But I was genuinely sad about this because what's even worse is that he died like right after he, you know, knocked out the Allosaurus with a sledgehammer. He was trying to save his wife. She was being attacked by the Allosaurus. It seemed like we were going to lose her. And then he hits the Allosaurus in the foot, like right on the heel. The Allosaurus turns around and he gets like a really good hit in with the sledgehammer. And the Allosaurus is seemingly knocked out. And then he runs up to make sure that she's okay. He's checking on her to make sure that she's okay. And then, of course, you see the Allosaurus get up in the background like immediately. It was not knocked out at all. It was trying to recover for a bit because it wasn't expecting that. And then it just grabs him by the leg and the whole thing happens. That was just... It was very sad. It was very sad. I certainly was not expecting something like that to happen. So that was just pure insanity. Speaking of brutalities, this movie was overall a lot more brutal than I thought. Their neighbor was torn apart by pterosaurs, and you can like see a huge blood puddle. You can see like a huge blood puddle as a result of that. When people are first finding out that dinosaurs are now in their backyards. You see people getting dragged off by coelophysis. I saw one guy getting his head eaten by one of the croc relatives. Later, like as the movie progresses, there's just bodies in the street, and some people are just getting eaten in the street by pterosaurs and things like that. This was an overall like pretty brutal movie, probably a lot more brutal than many of us might have expected. But, to be fair, they did properly warn us with that first trailer, so here we are. Now, eventually the characters do find out that the way that they leave is through like anomalies that show up. They find one that's like on top of a hill outside of somebody's house, and they manage to get through. The remaining people, they do survive. They did end up saving one of the kids' friends, like newfound friends. They did end up saving them, and they brought them back to the present day. But they are transported back to like just 20 minutes before the anomaly like swallows all of the neighborhood. So they can't properly save or rescue anybody, warn anybody about this because nobody will believe them. But then, they also say, oh man, our past versions are probably down there right now. They kind of established that. But then, Anne Hathaway, she decides to like order a pizza for an address that was like right in front of them, because he's Ewan McGregor's like a pizza delivery driver in this. He's like had to take a part-time job to make some money because he got laid off. That's a huge part of the story as well. But she orders a pizza for the house that they're in front of, so that he shows up and they essentially save him. But in doing so, they also kind of like took him away from the rest of the family, because he, in the past, when he barely got home from work, that's when the anomaly took them. So they were all together, but now he's gone. And now their past selves, hypothetically speaking, are just in the past without him. Are they going to make it? I don't know. Like, is this a situation where it's like you need all of the family members to be there? And apparently Anne Hathaway also called some of their neighbors, like their, next door neighbor, and like some of her friends, to tell them to get onto the hill before this happens. And they all believed her. And so they were saved, but the rest of the neighborhood was still transported back, and probably everybody died. And it's, as we saw in the rest of the film, it was a pretty brutal situation to be in. So yeah, they might have kind of screwed over their past selves. It's hard to say really. And obviously they couldn't really save anybody else, but it's still kind of sad to think that they, like only some people can make it and others can't. But yeah, like I said, this was a pretty good movie. Like, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was great to see Spinosaurus again. I didn't even mention that. The design's okay. A lot of it is just like early 2000 Spinosaurus with just like small amounts of feathers on it. The skull is very jagged and stuff like that. It's an all right design. It's not my favorite in the world. And Spinosaurus didn't have the biggest role in the movie anyway. It just kind of like smashed the car around, and then like Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway, they ran off, and it's like it tried to chase them, but then it stopped at a swimming pool to get a drink of water. Yeah, I don't know if I really have any other spoilery thoughts. My biggest thing that I wanted to get off my chest was the death of Ewan McGregor. I seriously did not expect that to happen, especially the way that it happened. It was just so brutal, man. So brutal. You got my hat's been on crooked this whole time. Man, how many of you did that bug? I'm sure it bugged a lot of you. It always bugs me whenever that happens. But anyway, I don't know if I have any other spoilers that I would like to bring up with this movie. It was good. I recommend it, and like I mentioned in yesterday's review, obviously they used AI dogs to, like, in one of their advertisements, which I think is just the stupidest thing for them to do. Not only do I think it's stupid to use AI in that sort of way, like, I mean, seriously, like, what are we doing? But also to do that before the movie is even released. You're basically just shooting your movie in its foot before it has the chance to release. You're giving your movie a bad reputation. Like, what is with that? I'll reiterate what I said in yesterday's video. As far as I know, no AI was used in the actual movie, which is good. But them using AI in the advertisement kind of feels like companies testing the waters, if you get what I'm saying. I bet you that these companies are just itching to use AI in films. And I don't like that. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be like, oh yeah, AI was used in this movie. It's like, great. it's becoming more, and like it seems like it's becoming more and more inevitable. People are going to start losing jobs, and that is not something that I am looking forward to seeing. So them using AI to make a little dog podcast to advertise their film was a stupid idea, and and again, I think that it's like the beginning of something worse that is likely to come. I certainly hope that I'm wrong, but that's what it feels like to me. I'm just glad that this movie has been like, I'm glad no AI was in this movie, but I can't say the same for any future movies, which certainly worries me. Um, but that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and have an awesome day. All right.